The year was 2002. I was invited to try my hand at a stand-up comedy workshop. My first question, maybe my only question to you, is if I can get you a gig tonight at a local comedy club, how many people will jump on that stage? I see 2 partial hands. I can ask that in a room of 1,000 people, 2,000 people, and I usually get 4 or 5 people. The number one fear in the world is public speaking. It's above death. What Jerry Seinfeld has said is that means is that if you were at a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy. So I will say this, stand-up comedy is actually above public speaking in fears. So the question is, why is it not the number one? It's because so few people ever try it, they can't even register it. So the point is, whenever you're invited to a workshop to try stand-up comedy, you're a little reluctant. But the thing I know is that I can attend a workshop like a boss. Notice, attend a workshop. That doesn't mean I'm ever going to get on a stage, does it? So what happened was we went to this workshop, and what we were taught is, here's how you adjust a mic stand, and that Dane Cook rules. So you heard me say, above the number one fear in the world, and our teachings, our lessons were, here's how you adjust a mic stand. So week 3 was the week I was excited about, because we were going to go to a local club, and we were going to watch people entertain us. This was exciting. About 10 minutes to 8, show was supposed to start at 8, the audience is there. We're looking for the entertainers and the comics. You probably see where this is going. We said to the guy who was hosting the workshop, who got us into this thing, we said, Guy, which is what his name was, Guy, where are the entertainers, the comics? So he turned to us and said, you're looking at them. So now it's 10 to 8. Now the new debate, as you can guess, is who's going up first. Nobody wants to be the sacrificial lamb. So what I did was I ran off to the bathroom to look for the exit window. There was no exit window in the bathroom. 15 of us showed up that night. When I came back into the bathroom, 8 were gone. I've never seen any of those 8 again. So there were 7 of us left. And again, the debate is who's going to go up first. So I had attended one Toastmasters meeting. And what I learned in Toastmasters was, Toastmasters is for public speaking, I learned you should go up first. Get it over with first. So I said, fine, let's do it. So I jumped up on the stage and I grabbed that mic. And they're still over here, by the way, 5 after 8 debating who's going up first. So they didn't know I was going up. So I grabbed the mic and I told what I considered to be the best joke that I've ever told in my life to dead silence. So now the streams of sweat are running down my face. I realized the stand-up comedy gig a little tougher than I thought. But I also realized if you're already up there, you've done the hard part. So I jumped into the second joke. Said, please let it be better than the first, even though I thought the first was the best joke ever. The second joke, not only was it dead silence, I think I saw a tumbleweed go by the stage. I'm not confirming that, but I think I did. I heard you hear about the crickets in a comedy room when no laughs happen. I think I heard the cricket. It was there. And so finally, Guy calls me over to the corner of the stage, and he hits me in the back of the head, and he says, you idiot, we haven't even turned the mic on yet. That was my first night in stand-up comedy. So that became my experience with stepping outside my comfort zone. Had I stepped outside it before? Yes, but that was a pretty massive step outside my comfort zone. So here's what's interesting. What happened after that experience is that I started to have great things happen in my life. I actually uncovered and discovered my passion for speaking from that comedy night. So great things started happening outside my comfort zone. So I started getting interested in this and saying, most people, it seems, don't step outside their comfort zone. The first time I do, great things start happening. So I wanted to do an experiment with this. So I started what I call the list. So as you heard, I have a radio show. So what we did is I said I want to interview 100 celebrities, 100 big name, either business celebrities or celebrities. I've been interviewing people. This was way outside my comfort zone. Sitting with thought leaders, people who were running major companies, had television shows, way outside my comfort zone. But I said, you know what? I got to dive in. So my first interview was with Arlene Dickinson. Probably know who Arlene is, on a TV show, large marketing company, very successful. I can tell you that I did that full interview at a coffee shop covered in sweat for 2 hours. I'm like, why can't this be a short interview? Why is she so nice? Don't be so nice. Cut me off, because I was covered in sweat. It was the worst experience, I thought, in my life. It was as bad as stand-up comedy. But guess what? I started doing the second interview and the third interview. Now, when I asked friends of mine, colleagues, business professionals, how many people out of the list of 100, I gave them the names, do you think I'll be able to reach? They looked at the list, they looked at the names of those people and said 10. The highest number anybody guessed was 20. A year later, when I finished the 93rd interview, I realized at that point I could probably jump into any other lap without even thinking twice. So that's how far outside my comfort zone I had come. So I wanted to understand this a whole lot more. So I don't know if you can see that. You can probably guess who drew that. But basically what it shows you is on one side, it's the small little comfort zone. And what I discovered, I've done 4,000 plus interviews now. So I've looked back at these interviews, I've asked these questions, and what I discovered is most of these thought leaders, their comfort zone was that small to begin with. My comfort zone was that small to begin with. What I started realizing is almost everybody starts with a small comfort zone. What was the difference? They found a way to take the steps and expand their comfort zone. So you can see there, these are just some of mine in my little comfort zone. Outside of there was stand-up comedy, public speaking, skydiving, interviewing celebrities. At the top, expressing love. I couldn't even tell my mother I loved her at that point. So that was outside my comfort zone. But once I started taking these steps, guess what happened? I started having these amazing experiences. These experiences I never would have had otherwise. I started discovering what I consider the best version of myself. What I've learned is that most people's purpose and passion is just outside their comfort zone. So once I realized that we can all expand our comfort zone, what I wanted to know is how do we do it? So here's what I discovered. I discovered 3 things that these thought leaders are doing to expand their comfort zone that you can walk away tomorrow and do as well. And I tested these. So the first one is desire. So we had Silken Olympian on our show, and we were talking about public speaking. And she told me that public speaking was her biggest fear, which kind of surprised me because she's a public figure, and I just made an assumption that it came naturally. She said it was her biggest fear. I said, well, how did you overcome it? She said, well, I realized that my voice, getting this message out, was bigger to me. That desire to do that was bigger than the fear of doing it. So I thought, there's something here. The desire to do it, in other words, you've heard of the why. Her why was so big that she was willing to make the how work. So I found out that there's something to this. So I said, I'm going to study this with our dog. So that's Sprocket, the semi-retired rocket, on the other side. You may wonder why this picture. Well, the girlfriend bought him this winter coat about a year ago. And then this Christmas, all of a sudden, I get a winter coat. Do you notice the similarity? I'm about to walk him the other day, and she said, I'm going to put his coat on. And that's when I clued in. I said, oh my God, you're trying to make us twinsies. Which I actually Googled and is a word. I didn't know that was a word until recently. But Sprocket, we moved into this place with a lot of stairs. And Sprocket is terrified of walking up the stairs. But here's the cool thing I discovered. As much as he's terrified of walking up the stairs, he has more desire to be up the stairs with us. So lo and behold, and I videoed this, Sprocket starts walking up the stairs. Next thing you know, daily, Sprocket goes up the stairs like it's nobody's business, which is going to bring me to my second thing that I've learned. But this thing that I discovered, I started looking, and with these 4,000 enlightened thought leaders, or enlightened superachievers I call them, this was a common thread. Their why was bigger than the fear. Their desire was bigger than the fear, so they were willing to face the fear. So if you can figure out in relation to the fear you're trying to conquer what your why is, why do you want to conquer that? If you can figure out a way to make that bigger than the fear itself, this is a first step to expanding your comfort zone. So I said that would lead me to steps. You can probably guess who drew this as well. So baby steps beats big steps. So the next thing I discovered when I started going back through our notes and going back through these interviews and looking what we documented is a lot of these people had taken baby steps to get to the big step. So you probably noticed with my stand-up comedy journey, I didn't know I was going to be jumping up on that stage. So I didn't have the opportunity to take baby steps. And guess what happened? 8 left because they weren't willing to take that big step. Public speaking. A lot of people will never get on the stage because they're scared to take that big step. But what I discovered is you can take baby steps. That will get you closer to the big step. And when you reward yourself for those baby steps, you'll want to take more of them. And eventually, you've taken enough baby steps that you've built up your immunity that you can take that big step. So as an example, in the stand-up comedy, what I could have done in the stand-up comedy world is I could have went to the club and interviewed other comics. I could have went to a public speaking course. I could have watched comics on TV and taken notes. These would have been baby steps that would get me closer to performing on that stage. So baby steps is number 2. Be willing to take those baby steps. Number 3, what I learned number 3 as a strategy was a support system always beats going it alone. So I had an opportunity a few years ago to go to a First Nations sweat lodge. How many people here have been in a sweat lodge? So I actually see a few hands. So a sweat lodge, if you haven't been in one, I mean, this is probably the worst way to explain it, but basically it's a lodge or a teepee. You go inside, there's stones that are there around a fire, and you have somebody throwing hot water on those stones to basically sweat your toxins out. So first of all, going inside the lodge was a fear to me for that reason. But the secondary part, what I discovered whenever you're in the lodge is that people share some of their deepest emotions and fears. And I wondered, why could those people share this in that lodge, but maybe not share that normally? And again, what it seems like is it's because they had a comfort zone of other people that were there sharing similar vulnerabilities. And then again, I started to look back, and I noticed this was a common thread. But you can even take the example of if you go to the gym, and your fear is going to the gym for the first time, what do? You get an accountability partner, right? If you bring somebody with you, there's a much better chance you're going to go to the gym in the first place and keep going. So find a buddy, find a support system, find somebody that can encourage you. And one thing I can tell you about fears is they don't necessarily go away. You're always going to probably discover something outside your comfort zone. So late last year, I got invited to do a talk in Brooklyn for at-risk youth. And as we were booking the talk, they proceeded to tell me about the gang violence that was taking place near the center and all the stuff that was happening in that part of town and what I should do to watch out for that. So admittedly, this was a fear to me. It was outside my comfort zone. So what happened is, but I also looked at it and said, you know what, the people that I'm going to speak to, think of everything they've gone through that day to get there and maybe go through every day. So I can take one for the team and go there once. But here's the cool thing. Going back to my 3 strategies I mentioned for stepping outside your comfort zone, I noticed after I did it that the thing that made it possible were that all 3 of those strategies took place on that day. So the example is the why. What was the purpose? Well, I was raised by a single mother, and I was having an opportunity to go speak to almost every person in that room who was also raised by a single mother. And I was able to share my journey with them and hopefully inspire them by what is possible. The second part is the baby steps. So the baby steps, we actually got ourselves there earlier. So we got ourselves there earlier in the day. We got ourselves acclimatized. We went to the place. We met everybody. And that was the baby steps for me. I didn't just show up and walk in and start speaking. And then finally, the support system was my girlfriend. She came along for the journey. And she had so much excitement about this, about reaching these students, that it carried over to me. But again, these 3 things came up again. So if you can figure out, so this is what I discovered, and if you can take this and apply it to stepping outside your comfort zone, my experience is that's going to be the difference maker. So if you can figure out a why or a desire that's bigger than the fear that you're going to face. If you can take those baby steps, and by the way, map out what those baby steps are and reward yourself each time you take a little baby step, because we love the rewards. It keeps us coming back. And then finally, if you can get a support system for you to help you step outside the comfort zone, make it public that you're going to do this. Get some cheerleaders to help you. That's what I discovered makes the difference. And why should you bother? Because you're going to discover the warrior within you if you take these steps. My experience is the people that take these steps end up having the type of life they've always wanted to have. So in other words, they have that bigger, that bigger experience life. They end up having, maybe they find their passion and purpose. Some people, I don't know if you know the stat, but they say that some people go their whole life without ever discovering their purpose. If you could take some steps outside your comfort zone and discover your purpose that much earlier, wouldn't it be worth the journey? So become that warrior within. Thank you so much.